Namaste, Dhanavad Pranam. By the instruction and grace of our spiritual master, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Canto 1, Creation, Chapter 15, texts 25 through 26. Jalokasham Jale Yadvan, Mahanto Dantyani Yasha, Durbhalan Balino Rajan, Mahanto Balino Mita, Evam Balistar Yadubir, Mahadbir Itaran Bibu, Yadun Yadubir Anyonyam, Bubaran Sanjahara. O king, as in the ocean, the bigger and stronger aquatics swallow up the smaller and weaker ones, so also the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to lighten the burden of the earth, has engaged the stronger Yadu to kill the weaker, and the bigger Yadu to kill the smaller. Purport. In the material world, the struggle for existence and survival of the fittest are laws, because in the material world there are disparities between conditioned souls due to everyone's desire to lord it over material resources. This very mentality of lording it over the material nature is the root cause of the conditioned life. And to give facility to such imitation lords, the illusory energy of the Lord has created a disparity between conditioned living beings by creating the stronger and the weaker in every species of life. The mentality of lording it over the material nature and the creation has naturally created a disparity, and therefore the law of the struggle for existence. In the spiritual world there is no such disparity, nor is there such a struggle for existence. In the spiritual world there is no struggle for existence because everyone there exists eternally. There is no disparity because everyone wants to render service to the Supreme Lord, and no one wants to imitate the Lord in becoming the beneficiary. The Lord, being creator of everything, including the living beings, factually is the proprietor and enjoyer of everything that be. But in the material world, by the spell of Maya, or illusion, this eternal relation with the Supreme Personality of Godhead is forgotten. And so the living being is conditioned under the law of struggle for existence and survival of the fittest. Text 27. Desha kalarta yuktani, hrutapopashamani cha, haranti smarataschitam, govinda bihitani me. Now I am attracted to those instructions imparted to me by the personality of Godhead, Govinda, because they are impregnated with instructions for relieving the burning heart in all circumstances of time and space. Purport. Herein Arjuna refers to the instruction of the Bhagavad Gita, which was imparted to him by the Lord on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. The Lord left behind him the instructions of the Bhagavad Gita, not for the benefit of Arjuna alone, but also for all times and in all lands. The Bhagavad Gita, being spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the essence of all Vedic wisdom. It is nicely presented by the Lord himself for all who have very little time to go through the vast Vedic literatures like the Upanishads, Puranas, and Vedanta Sutras. It is put within the study of the great historical epic Mahabharata, which was especially prepared for the less intelligent class, namely the women, the laborers, and those who are worthless descendants of the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and higher sections of the Vaishyas. The problem which arose in the heart of Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra was solved by the teachings of Bhagavad Gita. Again, after the departure of the Lord from the vision of earthly people, when Arjuna was face to face with being vanquished in his acquired power and prominence, he wanted again to remember the great teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, just to tell all concerned that the Bhagavad Gita can be consulted in all critical times, not only for solace from all kinds of mental agonies, but also for the way out of great entanglements which may embarrass one in some critical hour. The merciful Lord left behind him the great teachings of the Bhagavad Gita so that one can take the instructions of the Lord even when he is not visible to material eyesight. Material senses cannot have any estimation of the Supreme Lord, but by his inconceivable power, the Lord can incarnate himself to the sense perception of the conditioned souls in a suitable manner through the agency of matter, which is also another form of the Lord's manifested energy. Thus, the Bhagavad Gita, or any authentic scriptural sound representation of the Lord, is also the incarnation of the Lord. There is no difference between the sound representation of the Lord and the Lord himself. One can derive the same benefit from Bhagavad Gita as Arjuna did in the personal presence of the Lord. The faithful human being who is desirous of being liberated from the clutches of material existence can very easily take advantage of the Bhagavad Gita, and with this in view, the Lord instructed Arjuna as if Arjuna were in need of it. In the Bhagavad Gita, 5 important factors of knowledge have been delineated pertaining to 1. The Supreme Lord, 2. The living being, 3. Nature, 4. Time and space, and 5. The process of activity. Out of these, the Supreme Lord and the living being are qualitatively one. The difference between the two has been analyzed as the difference between the whole and the part and parcel. Nature is inert matter displaying the interaction of 3 different modes, and eternal time and unlimited space are considered to be beyond the existence of the material nature. Activities of the living being are different varieties of aptitudes, which can entrap or liberate the living being within and without material nature. All these subject matters are concisely discussed in the Bhagavad Gita, and later the subject matters are elaborated in the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam for further enlightenment. Out of the 5 subjects, the Supreme Lord, the living entity, nature, and time and space are eternal, but the living entity, nature, and time are under the direction of the Supreme Lord, who is absolute and completely independent of any other control. The Supreme Lord is the Supreme Controller. The material activity of the living being is beginningless, but it can be rectified by transferal unto the spiritual quality. Thus it can cease its material qualitative reactions. Both the Lord and the living entity are cognizant, and both have the sense of identification, of being conscious as a living force. But the living being, under the condition of material nature called Mahat-tattva, misidentifies himself as being different from the Lord. The whole scheme of Vedic wisdom is targeted to the aim of eradicating such misconception, and thus liberating all living beings from the illusion of material identification. When such an illusion is eradicated by knowledge and renunciation, the living beings are responsible actors and enjoyers also. The sense of enjoyment in the Lord is real, but such a sense in the living being is a sort of wishful desire only. This difference in the consciousness is the distinction of the 2 identities, namely the Lord and the living being. Otherwise, there is no difference between the Lord and the living being. The living being is therefore eternally one and different simultaneously. The whole instruction of the Bhagavad Gita stands on this principle. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord and the living beings are both described as Sanatana, or eternal, and the Lord's abode, far beyond the material sky, is also described as Sanatana. The living being is invited to live in the Sanatana existence of the Lord, and the process which can help a living being to approach the Lord's abode, where the liberated activity of the soul is exhibited, is called Sanatana Dharma. One cannot, however, reach the eternal abode of the Lord without being free from the misconception of material identification. And the Bhagavad Gita gives us the clue on how to achieve this stage of perfection. The process of being liberated from the misconception of material identification is called, in different stages, fruit of activity, empiric philosophy, and devotional service, up to transcendental realization. Such transcendental realization is made possible by dovetailing all the above items in relation with the Lord. Prescribed duties of the human being, as directed in the Vedas, can gradually purify the sinful mind of the conditioned soul and raise him to the stage of knowledge. The purified stage of acquiring knowledge becomes the basis. The purified stage of acquiring knowledge becomes the basis of devotional service to the Lord. As long as one is engaged in researching the solution of the problems of life, his knowledge is called jnana, or purified knowledge. But on realizing the actual solution of life, one becomes situated in the devotional service of the Lord. The Bhagavad Gita begins with the problems of life by discriminating the soul from the elements of matter and proves by all reason and argument that the soul is indestructible in all circumstances, and that the outer covering of matter, the body and mind, change for another term of material existence, which is full of miseries. The Bhagavad Gita is therefore meant for terminating all different types of miseries, and Arjuna took shelter of this great knowledge, which had been imparted to him during the Kurukshetra battle. Text 28. Sutta uvacha evam chintayato gisho evam chintayato gisno Krishna padasaro ruham sohardena tigadena santashid vimalamati. Sutta Goswami said, thus being deeply absorbed in thinking of the instructions of the Lord, which were imparted in the great intimacy of friendship, and in thinking of his lotus feet, Arjuna's mind became pacified and free from all material contamination. Purport. Since the Lord is absolute, deep meditation upon him is as good as yogic trance. The Lord is non-different from his name, form, quality, pastimes, entourage, and specific actions. Arjuna began to think of the Lord's instructions to him on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Only those instructions began to eliminate the tinges of material contamination in the mind of Arjuna. The Lord is like the sun. The sun's appearance means immediate dissipation of darkness or ignorance, and the Lord's appearance within the mind of devotee can at once drive away the miserable material effects. Lord Chaitanya has therefore recommended constant chanting of the name of the Lord for protection from all contamination of the material world. The feeling of separation from the Lord is undoubtedly painful to the devotee, but because it is in connection with the Lord, it has a specific transcendental effect which pacifies the heart. Feelings of separation are also sources of transcendental bliss, and they are never comparable to contaminated material feelings of separation. Text 29. Vasudevan kriyanudyan paribrahmita ramhasa bhaktya nirmatirtha deshesh bhaktya nirmatita sesha Kashaya Dishanorjuna. Arjuna's constant remembrance of the lotus feet of Lord Sri Krishna rapidly increased his devotion, and as a result, all the trash in his thoughts subsided. Purport. Material desires in the mind are the trash of material contamination. By such contamination, the living being is faced with so many compatible and incompatible things that discourage the very existence of spiritual identity. Birth after birth, the conditioned soul is entrapped with so many pleasing and displeasing elements, which are all false and temporary. They accumulate due to our reactions to material desires, but when we get in touch with the Transcendental Lord and his variegated energies by devotional service, the naked forms of all material desires become manifest, and the intelligence of the living being is pacified in its true color. As soon as Arjuna turned his attention toward the instructions of the Lord, as they are inculcated in the Bhagavad Gita, his true color of eternal association with the Lord became manifest, and thus he felt freed from all material contaminations. Text 30. Gitam Bhagavata Jnanam Yatat Sangrama Mordani Kalakarma Tamorudham Punar Adhyagamat Prabhu. Because of the Lord's pastimes and activities, and because of his absence, it appeared that Arjuna forgot the instructions left by the personality of Godhead. But factually this was not the case, and again he became lord of his senses. Purport. A conditioned soul is enwrapped in his fruitive activities by the force of eternal time, but the Supreme Lord, when he incarnates on the earth, is not influenced by Kala, or the material conception of past, present, and future. The activities of the Lord are eternal, and they are manifestations of his Atmamaya, or internal potency. All pastimes or activities of the Lord are spiritual in nature, but to the layman they appear to be on the same level with material activities. It so appeared that Arjuna and the Lord were engaged in the battle of Kurukshetra as the other party was also engaged, but factually the Lord was executing his mission of incarnation and association with his eternal friend Arjuna. Therefore, such apparently material activities of Arjuna did not drive him away from his transcendental position, but on the contrary revived his consciousness of the songs of the Lord, as he sang them personally. This revival of consciousness is assured by the Lord in Bhagavad Gita 18.65 as follows: Manmanna bhava madbhakto madhyajimam namaskuru mamevasyasi satyam te pratijane priyosi me. One should think of the Lord always. The mind should not forget him. One should become a devotee of the Lord and offer obeisances unto him. One who lives in that fashion becomes undoubtedly endowed with the blessing of the Lord by achieving the shelter of his lotus feet. There is nothing to doubt about this eternal truth. Because Arjuna was his confidential friend, the secret was disclosed to him. Arjuna had no desire to fight with his relatives, but he fought for the mission of the Lord. He was always engaged in the execution of his mission only, and therefore, after the Lord's departure, he remained in the same transcendental position, even though it appeared that he forgot all the instructions of Bhagavad Gita. One should therefore adjust the activities of life in pace with the mission of the Lord, and by doing this one is sure to return back home, back to Godhead. This is the highest perfection of life. Thus ends our reading for today. We will continue from text 31 on Monday, hopefully. All glories to Om Vishnupad, Srila Bhakti Niskam Shanta Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Om Vishnupad, Sripad Bhakti Vigyan Muni Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Om Vishnupad, Sripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Om Vishnupad, Srila Bhakti Nirmala Charya Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Om Vishnupad, Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Om Vishnupad, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. All glories to Om Vishnupad, Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Om Vishnupad Bhagavan Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Jai. All glories to Arupa Nuga Guru Varga Ki Jai. All glories to all the assembled devotees, all the worldwide devotees, Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to Navadvip Dham Ki Jai, Mayapur Dham Ki Jai, Nrsimhapali Dham Ki Jai, Ekachakra Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Baladev Subhadra, Jagannath Ju Ki Jai, Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Giri Govardhan Gupta Govardhan Dham Ki Jai, Sham Kund Radhakund Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi, Vrinda Devi Ki Jai, Nitai Gaur Pramanandi, Hari 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 Bol. Dhanavat Pranam.